When they first came out, people were like, ridiculous. And obviously some people are still saying that. Some will think that they make things really dangerous and really... I'll be honest with you, this isn't really my kind of harness. It's the most popular high performance racing harness there is, so there's got to be a reason for that. And so I wanted to test it out and find out for myself, what's it really like? Ozone Submarine, and this is the version 1.2. The harness is still the version 1, the actual harness inside the frame. And the envelope, the outer part here, which is the red bit on this one, is the 0.2, the second version of that. What's it actually like to deal with all this stuff? What's it like on the ground? And then, of course, what's it like to fly with? So that's what I was really interested in. Also, I was interested in the fact of things like how the reserves, it's got 2 reserves. So that's one of the features of this kind of harness. But really, that's been a feature of high-end competition and XC harnesses for some years now. But the big difference with this is it's the envelope, really, because what you have inside is really a very normal harness. That's what you can't see from the outside. It looks like, oh my god, what's inside there? And it is, they are quite something when you see them flying around the sky. When they first came out, people were like, ridiculous. And obviously some people are still saying that, but fewer and fewer, because, well, they've proven, there's no doubt about it, that they do give you extra performance. So that's particularly relevant for competitions, but it's also relevant for cross-country flying, and it even is relevant, I found, for soaring around on the local hill. Now, obviously, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for some, it certainly is. And I think what I'm seeing is that it's like, funnily enough, when pod harnesses first came out, over the years we've had like iterations where first of all harnesses were very simple and basic, and as they got more complex, people were like, that's ridiculous, I'll never fly one of that. I started paragliding because it was the simplicity of it. Fair enough. But then like the first pod harnesses came out, and I have to admit myself thinking, oh god, what a load of faff, why do you want to fly one of those? And now they've evolved such, and also a lot of it's getting used to it, and they are aimed at pilots who are just looking for the best performance you can get. And there is a price to pay, which is what we'll talk about. The key thing I wanted to show you is just, if you can see inside, really, you've got a harness with a seat board, back here, which you can see like so, and it's just a normal kind of frame inside the harness. There's, as you have with all higher end pod harnesses, there's these supports here, which are largely actually, if you decide to put, you can zip on an extra container and put ballast in there if you want more weight. Pilots who know about performance will know that sometimes in strong conditions you want to be heavier loaded. I have to say, just in my normal flying, maybe it's a bit more relevant when we fly on our little hills, and having an edge in performance can often make the difference between staying up or going down. So it's not just about, oh, I'm the best pilot and performance. It's actually sometimes the difference between having a great flight or going down to the bottom, or sinking out, or not getting up. You know, maybe if you're living in the Alps and it's booming conditions and you just want to fly about in booming conditions, then you're not worried about your performance at all, then obviously this harness is totally irrelevant to you. But if you're looking to get an edge of performance and you don't want to step up a class of glider, because that's, in some ways that's more of a compromise of safety, then that's an option to consider. So the main thing I just wanted to show is that actually when you open it up and have a look, you'll realise it's not such a weird thing after all. But this also explains why some people have been a bit surprised why these envelope harnesses are quite expensive. You've almost got 2 things in one, really. You've got a harness like that, and then you've got this whole envelope. that goes all around it. You can completely separate them. It's getting on sort of almost double the complexity. Yes, you do have a skin and fairing on other harnesses as well, but it's kind of the way they have to deal with it is they have to make them two separate things, but then are attached together. And that's why you have things like in here, in the nose cone, they have to put a separator here, which you then end up, depending on your height and adjustment, you have to change the size of this. You then adjust the pod harness part to fit you as you do normally with a harness, but then you need to get the spacer right here so that the skin has the right tension on it. Otherwise you'll notice some people are flying around in submarines or other envelope harnesses like the Genie Race 5 or the Supair Alp, the ultralight version, and then you'll notice they have lots of creases on it, or the harness kind of kinks up or down at the back or something like that, and they haven't got the tension quite right, or there'll be sort of creases on the front. So that we start to get into a little bit of the price you pay as well as the actual price with this kind of harness, is that setting them up is a bit more complex because you have to do that as well. But having done it now with a few different harnesses, it's not like rocket science. It does require a bit of patience, however, and that doesn't work with all paraglider pilots. The interesting thing is that, I mean, it depends a bit on the harness, but in terms of safety wise, I mean, there is definitely extra complication in setting up and all that sort of thing, and some will mention about this sort of harness landing in water is obviously more of an issue. So that complexity can be an issue. So I think if you're kind of overloaded with paragliding normally, then you don't want to add stuff to that. But if you can cope with a bit more stuff, then again you can gain some performance there. Let's have a look. You have the two reserve pockets, so left and right there, and they're very well integrated into the harness. What I was surprised to find is they're actually not very big. I don't really take very big reserves, so I ended up putting some light reserves in there, but in a way that helps you keep your weight down. And they've got kind of these quite firm sort of bits here. I don't know if that's the sort of to protect the reserve or just hold it very, keep its shape so it doesn't bulge out. Sort of waterproof zip things. These zips are sort of very well integrated with the handles on here as well. The system itself, setting it up, again, does require a bit of patience. It's not the simplest system, but it does work very well. It's very clean. I'm actually quite pleased with it. I think it's an improvement over some older Ozone harnesses. This is all very clean. It all opens very wide so that you've got a very good deployment. This here is the reserve bridle channel, and it's like, that works, it does the job, but it's like, you know, it could be a bit neater and tidier. You do actually, on that note, need to be a little careful. You set that all up right, and then you tuck away the bridles inside there. Actually, what I'll do now is, while I've got this out, so this harness part here, there's the pocket on the back. So the storage area is, it's okay, it's a good size. I personally would have liked a bit more storage, but then I'm usually carrying extra camera gear and other stuff. So for most pilots, especially competitional pilots who are just cross-country flying, if you haven't got extra camera gear, it's definitely fine. So there's a storage there. It fits the backpack fine and a bit more. The water bottle goes inside there, but it works very well. And I do have to say as well, like, there's some nice details here, like these pockets on the side that give you a bit more storage. But it's actually something I'd say that I've noticed in general with these envelope harnesses, is they've tended to get the envelope and the shape and everything like that. They don't have a lot of space in them, and you know, they're not vol-biv harnesses. You're not going to take this vol-biving or doing a hike and fly race with this. it's too sort of bulky to carry. These bits here, this is so you can see on the product thing, this is if you want to zip on and have an extra deck, which I do think is actually useful, because otherwise you only really have this deck here, and is well designed, sits nicely on the strap. That's good enough for some instruments. That's the thing that you can see through the window on here. And there's quite a major improvement. When they brought out the first version of the Submarine, I thought it wasn't quite ready. Now they've brought out the second version, which is a year ago, and that to me seemed like, yeah, okay, there's some things about it, like the zip up the window here, which are still something to get used to, but quite a big improvement. They improved how the whole envelope is. Seems to be very clean and inflate nicely. I think it inflates a bit better than the first version, and it inflates nicely and has a very good shape. And then the deck sits on there, and I found that works very well. And then what I tend to find is you use this deck, you can then put phone and your battery, your power bank and things in there. The same as all of these harnesses, you've got to get them through the harness shoulder strap and then also the envelope hole as well. With all of them I found it's easy to kind of miss one of the straps, so you just have to be methodical about it and do that. And I found that as long as I got that methodical routine and I go through it, then I found it all fine. On the ground, the envelope, I found for me, because I've got quite a long back, and so I'm slightly between sizes, but I'm definitely a medium, I found that the envelope thing's kind of pushing on the back of my neck a bit when I'm on the ground. So if I stand on the ground for a while, it's a little bit uncomfortable. I notice in the air there's a slight benefit to it because it's actually slightly holding my head up, so that's quite good. But on the ground it is a little bit like kind of pushing my neck down a bit. And then you can see, because of this harness, it needs to be, it's not quite airtight, but it needs to be fairly airtight, so the air flows in through the nozzle there and then flows through past you, and that's what fills up the tail. You don't have, on this kind of harness, it's not like those other pods where you have like inlets coming in through the side here to flow up the back. It's actually coming in from the nose, which is the same with the Genie Race 5 and the Supair Alp and any of the envelope harnesses you see. Once you're in the harness and you're all set up, there's no doubt clipping in and all that is a bit of a faff, but once you've done that and on the ground, the harness is actually better than I was expecting it to be. I found that it doesn't interfere too much with your launch, so I was quite pleased with that. I thought it might be more awkward and difficult than that. You do notice the extra bulk and weight of it, but I actually found it not too bad. So let's talk about the tail. This is the same with all of them. If there's some breeze blowing and you leave the tail, then it's going to start to inflate and then flap about and get in your face and not get in the way, and it's be a right pain. So you've got to learn to tuck it away, and you can do various things like one of the things I've done is this kind of little sun visor bit that you zip onto here, so it zips on like that, and I found I can just tuck it into there and that gets it out of the way. That's a really simple solution. Some pilots stick it under their arm. You can also actually put it where you've got your arm through the hole. I found you can sort of stuff it in there a bit. It's probably under your arm or inside there, works quite well. There is also, if you put it onto this side, there's an extra zip here which is meant for accessing your instruments, and you could stick it in that as well. The thing is, then you'd have to zip it as well. So yeah, for me the best option I found is to stick it inside that window thing there, and that works all right. So that's one of the things I'll say with these harnesses you have to get used to, is dealing with that. All of these harnesses, that are very high level harnesses, you notice they're in a very supine reclined position, and for me that's actually could be possibly the biggest thing to get used to. And it is just a case of flying like that for a while and getting used to that position. And if you don't stay in that position, if you try and sort of sit upright or something like that, you're actually going to cause the whole harness to sort of bend, and it cause it to be inefficient or less efficient than it could be, and slightly lose out on the benefit and the reason for having the envelope harness in the first place. So you do need to kind of, I call it, give in to the position. You kind of you're just really laid back. Imagine like you're on a real beach deck chair and you've got it completely flat laid out. That's pretty much how you're flying. That does mean it does affect as well ahead of you where you're seeing. So there's, first of all, there's getting used to it, and the way that you weight shift and turn and stuff like that is quite different, even more so than a kind of mid-range pod. That for me has actually been the biggest thing to get used to. Everything else, it's kind of, okay, work that out, get used to it, adapt to it. But that position when you're flying around in the air, especially when it starts to get choppy, it's kind of can be a bit disconcerting. But I found it's the sort of thing that the more you do it, the more you get used to it. Of course, there is that argument always when you're in that very laid back position. If you have a sudden, very violent collapse, you've got a bit more chance, or you have more chance of getting a twist. So that's a kind of consideration. So there, with this kind of harness, you're always trying to balance out what's your priorities. There's no doubt you're taking on, they cost more, there's more complexity, a bit more weight, a bit more bulk, and then you've also got difference in getting used to them and handling and how they are and having to adapt to that. But yes, I would recommend that it takes a bit, and I'd recommend that you want to start off flying in some easy conditions first of all. And you might want to start off flying, even though it's not so efficient, that you're flying a little bit more feet down and maybe a slight more sit-up position so that you're more comfortable just getting used to the harness. Yep, it's not going to be so efficient, and you might even have some people taking the mickey because you're in this kind of harness but not sat right. But sod that, you're just getting used to it. I do have a bit of a tendency to want to sit more up. You kind of give in to the position, just give in, relax, lay back, and actually then it's actually very comfortable and quite relaxing. And obviously you're then in that position that's with the whole fairing, that the harness does reduce the drag, a lot. Generally the pilots who've been testing and measuring and all this sort of thing, opinions seem to differ a bit, but generally people say that it's as much as stepping up a level of glider, so it's giving you a significant performance boost. In terms of your safety, you've actually got 2 reserves. There's still, they've gone for a Choroid, the Neo Choroid protector. But while we're on this topic, because this is something that's raised quite a lot, the whole thing about protectors and other sort of things like that, it's quite a complicated discussion. Some people might have a very binary opinion about it, but I personally think it's a very nuanced and complicated topic. That's a kind of almost a separate discussion. So, but generally as well, they're trying with these protectors to get them more streamlined and slimmer. So there is an emphasis on that side. The speed system works really well, as you'd expect. The harness is very much designed with racing and performance in mind, so that works well. Now, having said that, I will be very honest here, as I always am, always try to be. The speed system that's on the submarine, it's a 3-step asymmetric speed bar, which is inspired by the bullet bar kind of thing. It's functional, it works, and it is totally fine, and clearly lots of pilots use it. But I do know quite a few pilots who fly this harness do change to an actual bullet bar or something else like that. So this personally I think is something that could be improved on. Having said that, it works perfectly fine, and it's this asymmetric system because you're using 1 foot at a time and works that. I don't know, I personally think, like for example the speed system on the Drifter, and that I think is a little better. Overall, for the submarine, I think I can see exactly why this is the most popular racing competition harness. I believe from what people have said, it still gives you the best, highest performance. They've really kept the emphasis on the best possible performance on it. What do other pilots think? What's your opinion on that one? The other thing now is that Ozone are now bringing out the next iteration of the envelope. So they've gone from the 0.2 to the 0.4, as far as I know, and they've gone throughout. One of the major changes that they've done is they've now gone to magnetic zip. Now the first harness that I saw that on was the Supair Alp, the ultralight Supair Alp harness. I saw some people talking about the idea and stuff, but they're the first brand that I know of with an envelope harness who then put on, actually on their production harness, the magnetic zipper. That means that you don't have to do this zipping thing. The way they've designed it is you pull the red zip to do up the harness, like so. So that does it up. And then the idea is that when you're ready and you've finished your flight, you pull the black zip, and that then opens the harness to land. Now, that's what I did first of all. Now, the thing is, on our little hills, we quite often do multiple flights because we take off, scratch about, try and work the lift, and maybe don't quite get up or something, or we sort around for a bit and come and land, and we land back down again. And then I realised, oh, I can't actually open that back up again. I tried lying on the ground and doing it and all sorts of things, but I eventually worked out I had to get out of the harness. So well, what I worked out, I did work out eventually, I can actually undo the zip while I'm in the air as well, which involves letting go of the brakes. I don't do it unless it feels like the right moment. But the idea is generally that you reset the zip before you fly. So what you would do is actually pull the black zip all the way down to the bottom. Sorry, I'm making it look more of a faff than it is. And then you put the zips like that. So you end up putting the zips like that, and you pull the red zip to close the harness and the black zip to undo it. But what I worked out is you can actually do that while you're in flight. Not everyone's going to be happy to do that. That's the way I could work out I could do multiple flights in a day without having to get out of the harness each time. So that is doable. My point of view is that for me, this isn't really the kind of harness that I'll want to fly in a general everyday flying situation. I can see what they're about, really. They give you that extra performance. Yes, it is for some fat, and there are a price to pay, there are compromises, but at the end of the day, they give you the best performance that you can. It's down to you. Some will think that they make things really dangerous and really thing like that. I don't know. There are a compromise in terms of ease of use and usability and stuff, and things like in doing stalls. It's not the sort of harness you're going to do acro in. Lots of pilots have been flying these now for thousands of hours, or over a bunch of pilots, lots of hours, and I think they're here to stay, really. There's no need to get angry about it. I mean, if you want to compete at high level, because they give you the performance advantage, you might feel like you need to, but nobody's forcing you to compete at high level either. I have to admit that, having been very anti the idea of them myself and thinking it was ridiculous, having flown the harness now, I've kind of got used to them now and realised that it's just an evolution of our sport in a particular direction, and it's not everybody's direction. And I personally still really like the kind of light to mid-level pod. But then I do also like having a pod that's got good performance and efficiency, because it does help with your flying and it helps you make the most out of those, particularly when the conditions are a little bit more scratchy, and having a bit more performance helps you. So it's not just a racing competition thing, actually. It's what I realised, and actually what surprised me, is that actually this translates into something that is nice even for just local flying. Pilots who are sitting on the fence wondering if they should go to this kind of harness, well, I think you are looking to get the best performance you can, and say you are, I think this kind of harness does even make a difference on a high B glider or something like that, but it's particularly as you're going into the C class or above, and you're starting to fly on the bar more, and you're starting to, now you've been regularly flying cross country or otherwise just getting up high and thermaling and stuff like that, and now you kind of feel like you've milked what you can out of the glider, and now you want more performance, but you don't want to step up to a hotter glider. So the truth of the matter is, I think you're only going to really know if these are for you, if you're unsure, by getting one and trying it and flying it. Because when I started out testing these different harnesses, I was really not really for the idea. But now that I've flown them some more, definitely they are more faff, and that I personally don't like so much. But actually, once you're up and flying, it's not that dissimilar to flying a normal harness. You're just flying, and you've got a bit better performance. And by the way, the performance that it gives you, the particular boost I think that it gives you from my testing, is sync rate. I don't think they give you more speed. You'll be more efficient at speed, and maybe they do give you a bit, but I think the most important thing they give you is obviously less drag, but so they give you better sync rate, and so it makes you climb better. So that's why I think it's particularly noticeable when the conditions are light and scratchy and the thermals are weak. And even on a really good day, you sometimes get into a weaky thermal that you might just climb out on, and they do give you a little edge. That's it. That's all from me. Until the next time. See you. Bye.